My arms are too long. Hello and welcome to my thoughts on potentially the weirdest episode of Doctor Who I have ever seen. I used I a lot in that sentence because I can't presume, having not seen every single episode of Doctor Who and not knowing everyone who's watching this video's opinions, but I think it's safe to say it's a lot of people's weirdest episode of Doctor Who. Well, okay, there have been some pretty weird ones. There was a time that we pretended that the moon could be an egg and that was just normal. There was a time that we pretended that a forest could just grow in London and people would forget about it the next day because that's what humans do. But that was weird in like a weird funky writing kind of a way. This is weird in like a like it's meant to be weird kind of a way. Where do I even begin? Sorry, I've just been sat here for a few minutes trying to wonder, where do I even begin talking about this episode? I like the idea of setting an episode aboard an abandoned ship outside of, I guess, the universe and seeing, the monsters that reside there, like these formless, shapeless creatures who do not understand how to be creatures and will cause untold havoc if they enter the universe. I think that was done really, really well. When you try to conceptualize a horror from beyond, a thing from outside things, a nothing as kind of like a creature, as a monster, it's very easy to jump straight to like eldritch horrors and Cthulhu creatures and Lovecraftian monsters, but this was something different. This was something more sci-fi. This was something more like, they don't have anything to base themselves off of, so they base themselves off of the only other people that are on a ship, and the horror comes from, contorting those appearances and, making them look too long, making their arms too long. So yeah, okay, that scene, we can start there. That scene where Donna and the Doctor split up and they go to their different rooms, and then the Doctor walks back into Donna's room and starts talking to her. Do you know, before they cut away to a scene with Donna walking into the Doctor's room and you go, hang on a minute, you get that kind of like, your brain is putting together that these two scenes haven't quite sequenced correctly, which is a really fun way of adding like a meta level of something's not quite right. Before that, props to David Tennant, the first scene, where the Doctor walks into the room with Donna, the way he just slides down the wall and sits on his haunches, I knew immediately something was off. I was like, that is not Doctor body language behavior. Like, I'm not saying I twigged the entire thing. I just knew something was off. It must be very hard to write a scene like that, where you want to show that, Donna's talking to someone who isn't the Doctor, and the Doctor's talking to someone who isn't Donna, but neither of them know that yet. But you want the audience to kind of twig as, like, their own realization that these characters aren't who they appear to be and that the situation isn't as it appears to be. And yeah, it's just, it's bloody cool. I do remember feeling that the episode got off to a slightly slow start in terms of the pacing of the dialogue in a weird way. Nothing wrong with the dialogue itself, but there was lots of pausing between sentences in, like, not in like a way that it's actually a pause, but just like I would have edited that to be a little bit tighter maybe. But also this episode didn't actually feel like it had a rushed ending like 90% of Doctor Who episodes do, so maybe they actually were just trying to stretch it a bit to fit in with the time they were allotted. That's absolutely a baseless bit of speculation, but I'm trying to consider why. Anyway, we don't need to linger on that. I want to talk about how they addressed the Flux. I knew they were going to address the Flux at some point because RTD said so in an interview beforehand. I feel like if RTD heard those words, he would tut at himself and go, well, I gave something away that could have been a surprise. It's okay, don't worry, it's fine. The way the Doctor feels about the Flux in the RTD2 era very much reminds me of the way the Doctor felt about the Time War. It very much feels like, because remember, Russell T Davies did not solve the Time War. He did not write the 50th at all. He was long gone by that point. So it very much feels like the Flux is going to be the new Time War in terms of the basis of the Doctor's trauma. I am very much in the camp of a lot of 13, a lot of Jodie Whittaker, a lot of Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who is quite enjoyable and can be quite enjoyable, but it does have a lot of writing flaws, and I think one of the biggest writing flaws is this refusal to let characters sit down and feel things, and that's what RTD kind of brings back. And not having characters sit down and think about things and feel things means that when the Flux destroys half the universe and it's never mentioned again, it feels like it's been forgotten. So it feels very clunky in this episode when the Doctor suddenly, like, is called upon to remember the Flux, and we see how it's affected him, this incarnation, I guess, when we got nothing like that in the immediate aftermath of a Flux happening for Jodie. Although you could argue that this is still within, like, a 48-hour time span for the Doctor of witnessing that event from happening, maybe. But I'm so glad that it is actually being addressed as, like, a real thing. If RTD tried to, like, ignore it and pretend it hadn't happened, then, yeah, I still think Gallifrey needs to be addressed a little bit more. The Doctor had a throwaway comment about, like, when Donna, or the creature masquerading as Donna, asked him, like, how, you know, do you miss Gallifrey? How do you feel about it? He said yes, although things got complicated. That doesn't sound like an answer you'd give when saying, yes, I really miss it. Everyone's dead. Ugh, everyone's dead again, Donna. Shiver, shiver, shiver. I guess because the difference between Time War Apocalypse Gallifrey and Flux Apocalypse Gallifrey is that Time War Apocalypse Gallifrey couldn't be visited in any time period. I assume the Doctor can go back to the Gallifreyan past, and maybe the Doctor has this kind of attitude of like, oh, I can go and fix that another time since he's already done it once. Or maybe it'll be retconned a little bit and the Master won't have actually killed every single person on Gallifrey, but actually set it up to just look that way to mess with the Doctor, and the Doctor since found out off screen that that's not the case. You know, they could do anything, couldn't they? But yes, I love that the Flux is being kept as lore, and very much in a Dave Filoni fashion is kind of being fixed after the fact. Like, the way Dave Filoni fixed some of the issues with the Star Wars prequels wasn't by sweeping them under rug, it was by diving in and addressing them and actually, like, fleshing them out a bit, and that's exactly what RTD has done with the Flux, and that's really cool. Also in this episode, it was revealed that the Doctor is attracted to men. As a bisexual, all I can say is, hell yeah. I kind of expected this would happen within the David Tennant episodes, because I get the feeling that they want this to be a thing for the Doctor across multiple regenerations. So yeah, but they handled it very, like, you know, very casually, which I liked. One thing that I do take a tiny amount of issue with is he says, "Is that who I am now?" And, you know, Donna says, like, oh, it was always just beneath the surface, mate. Like, there have been times in the past when you can point to the Doctor's relationship with another man and be like, that's probably a little bit more than platonic. I guess it's a shame that, like, they kind of said, oh, now, as in, like, he's never felt that way before, or he's just now realizing that he's always felt that way and has never been open about it. I guess that's probably more what it is, right? It's not, oh, suddenly I'm attracted to men. It's, oh, I'm actually casual about being attracted to men. I don't know. I don't think it's really something that's meant to be given that much scrutiny, even though we know many corners of the internet certainly will. All I know is there's a male companion in the second Doctor's era, which people have a lot of fan theories about being slightly potentially romantic, which is I'm looking forward to seeing that for myself. And don't worry, I don't have my hopes up for anything super, like, obvious or crazy. I know how fan theories can be. The design of a ship was really cool. Sorry, was that a bit of a hard left turn away from topics like that, like character-based topics? Anyway, the design of the ship was really cool. I thought it was really cool. I like that we're in a sci-fi show that's been running for 60 years now, with tens and tens of seasons, hundreds of episodes, so many different moments of science fiction, and we can still have a really cool and unique looking ship like this, and a really cool and unique scenario like this. Like, this story felt fresh. Are they going to address the Mavity thing? Because it's not gravity anymore, it's Mavity. Is that... I feel like that's going to be a thing. I feel like there are some things which I'm expecting to be addressed before these specials, or I guess across the whole of RTD2, you know? Like, was Russell T Davies just trolling? Was he like, I'm going to make it so that in the Doctor Who canon from now on it's always called Mavity and I'm never going to address it again? Is that what he's doing? Or is it like a like a toy maker's game thing that, like, you know, they accidentally went back and messed with history because the toy maker guided them there that way or something? Could there be a reason why Russell T Davies is subtly reminding us that the past can change the future? Obviously, you'd think we'd know that with it being a time travel show, but you know, sometimes it's important to remind people that that can be the case. Oh, by the way, that Donna dying fake out was just rude. That was just rude. It's also, not to be too much of a critic, but it is the kind of thing which is very effective when Doctor Who is airing week to week and we don't know what's going to happen next. But on rewatching, that entire sequence is just going to be silly and dumb because we already know that Donna doesn't die there. It's very much playing on the audience's expectations of Russell T Davies pulling some really dark shit at some point or another, because we watched Torchwood, Russell. We know what goes on in that psyche of yours. Oh, the next time. Did anyone else see the next time trailer where we're seeing what's happening next time? We got a glimpse of David Tennant's upcoming regeneration, which is heartbreaking. And the general vibe I got from it was he's emotional about it happening, but it's more of a wholesome readiness of a transformation than it was last time for him. And this is a storyline I predicted all the way back when David Tennant first... I don't remember if it was after he was announced to be returning to Doctor Who, or if it was rumoured. I think it was when it was announced. This is my favourite pick on my bingo card, is the healthier regeneration. And you really get a sense through these specials that 14 is very much like 14 for a reason that hasn't been explained yet, and I'm fully expecting that to be a major part of next week's episode. In both episodes that we've seen so far, when things have got really tough, the Doctor has had a very angry, violent outburst against his environment. And I think that fact that it has happened twice is something to be noted. I think it is supposed to be signposting to us that there is something happening under the surface in terms of him mentally. I think he's 10 because 10 has some unresolved issues. A lot of people have also speculated that it's somehow the Toymaker's doing, because the Toymaker, likes to play games with people. But I prefer the idea that it's something happening within the Doctor themselves. And when the Doctor gets... And to be fair, there was a bit of this with 10, but when the Doctor gets angry and has these violent outbursts against his environment, it's very much a sign that he's not coping with the emotions that he's feeling inside him, and that there is a breaking point coming. Honestly, think about what the Doctor's been through recently as 13 in terms of the Flux. We've just had to reveal that the Flux is something that very much plays in the Doctor's mind as something as traumatic as the Time War. The Flux was when the Doctor failed to save half the universe, which is a staggeringly large amount of death. And while they know it's not their fault, two things can be true. They also know that it's their fault. I loved that part of this episode, by the way, because I've been saying two things can be true for years now. It's obviously something that everyone knows, but it's just really nice to see it used as a narrative device, especially to kind of like quickly describe the human condition. Anyway, I think the Toymaker is going to make all of these issues come to the forefront, and it's only then, after all that's been dealt with, that 14 is maybe when he has to say goodbye to Donna again and change occurs again and he realizes that he has to deal with change again, instead of being killed, which is what his regenerations are so often triggered by. Maybe this regeneration comes out like I don't need to be this version of myself anymore. I'm okay with it. I've made my peace with it, that this is who I once was and do not need to be again, and I can move on to become who I really want to be in my next regeneration. Enter Ncuti Gatwa. Oh, I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really dreading it, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really dreading it, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really dreading it. Two things can be true. Thank you very much for listening. Let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments if you like. I'm not going to make you, because as has previously been discussed, I am not your father. I hope. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week for the next episode.